first session and contributed just as evenly as anyone that's been here with us for any given time. And so feel free to hop in the discussion anytime you feel it's relevant. I think there was some of the strongest overlaps that we might see in some of the structure building of advocates, which is a lot of times what these sessions are about. Trying to think seriously about the way folks are organizing in DAO-like structures. Think seriously about distributed power. Thinking seriously about long-term sustainability. And so there's a lot of overlaps with, what is maybe the community building efforts of the NFT space, right? Which I know are critical. And so there's a lot of tooling too that goes into this, to help assist, these organizing and whatever governance efforts or decision-making efforts that we have. And so things that can hopefully be picked up, and used throughout the Web3 ecosystem. So that's usually what these sessions tend to be about. So, and folks like yourself could be a huge help for the outward-facing content that Doc is referencing in terms of making sure we have digestible language. Even though we want to think seriously about these things, we don't want to get too technical in how we're relating it out to folks. So it's a pleasure to have folks like yourself joining us. Again, thank you kindly for your time.
No, thank you. I think from what you're saying, a lot of the stuff that you guys are talking about, it really resonate with me. And some folks down here, in SA, in Zim, got a couple of friends, maybe in Nigeria, also got a couple of folks there. But what you're saying really it speaks close to my heart, because we've also been trying to onboard a couple of people because of what Stacks offer, especially also for people who are not getting recognition over saturated markets and stuff. So I do appreciate what you're saying. I think I'm definitely gonna enjoy this. So yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure. And these sessions we usually are focusing on something related to what is a big inspiration to us in the research, and not just inspiration, but the big practical means to some of the what you might call social technology or social layer tooling that gets built into advocates, which is the Ganyaga Nation of the Five Nations Longhouse Confederacy, a Native American nation in the Eastern Seaboard, the Quebec, Montreal area. And they have a particularly relevant role in history when it comes to so-called governance structures, right? So-called democratic structures, being a huge point of origin for things like federalism, for things like even caucuses or the exact language in U.S. preambles like "We the People," right? And a whole lot of other nuances, right? With the, in terms of historical relevance to folks like Engels and Marx, right? The French Enlightenment and the first Latin notions of equality, right, in terms of the language. And so these are been a big part of some of our foundational understandings around distributed power and what we call bottom-up organization, where there's these horizontal structures of representation. I think the democratic structures that we're most familiar with, we kind of get desensitized a little bit too familiar with not so representative representation. And so what we see is when you go back to these original Native American concepts, structures, the cosmologies that these structures are embedded in, you start to uncover all of the little intricacies that lend themselves to authentic bottom-up representation, rather than just the lip service, right? Or rather than what we are most familiar with. And so these are some of the things that we've started to learn together, started to build into tooling, thanks to folks like Haas who just dropped. Being able to hack away at tooling coming out of MetaGov, Policy Kit, and things like this, which is a research group out of Harvard and Oxford, blockchain research. And House has done some remarkable things in terms of building tooling that can wrap around things like Discord and connect us right to smart contracts and being able to kick off consensus flows right inside the Discord and for decision making processes. And this is some of the things that we usually discuss in today's session. Bringing some of these ideas together, actually bringing them into implementation. And in previous sessions, we were discussing some of the coordination efforts of getting into some of our consensus flows again, using the tooling, having some issues that are ripe to go into consensus, meaning they've been fleshed out at least a little bit, so folks have a chance to sink their teeth into them. And then we go into the consensus flows, which are directly from these native protocols for decision making, for consensus. And there's slight changes away from majority vote and towards 100% consensus, right? But the consensus in the native context, as we've learned recently, is embedded in these oral constitutions and oral cosmologies in the native context. And so we've even started to build out our own oral code of conduct that can be a point of reference in consensus, as opposed to just personal opinion. It can be this collectively accepted approaches or concepts, rules of thumb that can be, important for both legal in-between spaces in our dialogue structures, which is taken from some of our research from Primo Verde Filippi out of Harvard, but also, some of the understandings we've learned about in-between spaces in the native context and how it relates to preservation of long-term sustainability, integrity of core values, and things like this. So, today we can kind of pick up on any of these different branches that we end up on. I know that today I was planning to get started on some of what we call Bear Clan, of Turtle Wolf and Bear Clan design that we have embedded into the advocates, which again is right from these native structures. And so we can get into a little bit of this if you guys wanted to see how I was thinking about going about this. I think these are unofficially or going to be officially our first issues. Hopefully that goes smoothly. But we did see other folks start off issues attempting to kick off some of these clan structures. And I didn't see too much wrong with some of the approaches folks used, right? Whether it was folks on either side of the clan. So I think that'll probably be a big guide for me. I don't know if Hero or Merrick, you guys had any other thoughts on kicking these flows off. But starting with a post in active issues that has all of the contents, not unlike what Hero was able to do and Juliet was able to do with the conflict resolution, was going to be my first step forward. I think we should be good with starting off there. I don't know if you guys wanted to discuss anything beyond the coordination of this stuff today. I figured there could be that and a few other directions that we can go if we wanted to focus on Indigenous design. But I know this is one of the most pertinent things that, like I said, I think, as Hero mentioned yesterday, we should probably just get folks involved by using the tooling as we've had a couple attempts fall through just with folks' availability. And so, we've had some pretty in-depth discussions about how to, how we're going to approach this going forward, how the welcoming team can help push some of this forward. But until then, it'll be on the folks willing to opt into facilitating some of these things to kick it off. So that's, I think, where we are. I don't know if you guys had any other directions you guys wanted to see in the meeting, just some basic overview of certain aspects or general questions, kind of zooming out questions or statements, comments are all welcome. But yeah, I'll leave the floor open. Finally shut up.
Yo, so I think it's funny, Harold. You always said I'm be quiet now, and like I think for the most part in these meetings, everyone's like listening to talk and like giving feedback. So I know trying to keep that weight off your shoulders is something I've been like trying to think of how to do, because like in the aspect of like coding, engineering, and all the technical stuff, I'm really not that helpful of a person. So a lot of times I'm just here to listen. And yeah.
No, thank you kindly, man. A lot of times I think just the rephrasing of some of the things, even if it's just for your own clarity, can be of a big help. But also, um, uh, uh, there can be a spark, right, that happens that lends itself to what we call sense making here, right? Uh, where everybody here has a voice, right? In a horizontal space, and even if you're someone who just came in, welcome, Grandma Esker, I believe the name. You're in the right spot in terms of no matter what the topic is, right? Folks should be um, uh, feeling like a tangible air of being able to speak, and that what they say will be listened to seriously, and the feedback will be, conducive to furthering the discussion. And, it's almost like the improv that you might see in a jazz group, right? Or some type of band, right? Where as the sense making goes on, it might start off a little slower, but there's peaks and there's valleys and there's an ending, right? That feels complete, and that these sessions tend to go like that for myself, right? And they're all different. It's like every song's different, but uh, yeah, I think this is the flow, and folks like Hero or folks like Merrick have all fallen into this flow fairly nicely. Myself and Haas have fallen into a nice flow that way when it was just the two of us getting some of this tooling out in the first place, and um, and so yeah, this is kind of the flow, man. I think you're right in it. Even with some of our coordinating of the Twitter stuff coming up, or any of the other outward-facing things that we've been mentioning in recent sessions, we'll be able to continue that flow, and these sessions will change shape with your contributions, right? It'll be a beautiful thing, just like it has been so far. So welcome. But I'll give you time to introduce yourself, Grandma Esker, and yeah, it's beautiful to have you guys.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's Grandma Escher, and sorry for joining late. I set the notification and I didn't see it come in, so I was like, oh shoot, I'm late. But yeah, super happy to have joined. So I'm sure some of you probably know I became a stacks advocate like maybe a couple of weeks ago, and actually had a great call with the doc today about just getting more plugged in and kind of those like beginning steps. So yeah, I got into stacks earlier this year, and I help run the Austin Stacks chapter. So based in Austin, help running the chapter, and yeah, just super excited. Everyone I've talked to from this community has just been amazing, and I love what the advocates are trying to do, and now that I'm trying to do as I'm part of that community. So yeah, I'm just really excited to be here and learn and also contribute. So that's like a quick introduction, but I really do look forward to getting to know each of you more as the months go on.
No, beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful to have you. And yeah, I'm glad you guys found your way here and have looked around a little bit. Thank you kindly, Doc, for bringing folks into the session so quickly. It's really nothing better than folks being able to come right into these sessions, get some clarity about what's going on, and a general feel for the culture building we're attempting to do. And yeah, it's beautiful to have you guys. Feel free to, like I said earlier, interrupt us, even if that you don't have full clarity in what exactly what direction that we go into, and don't ever feel like it's changing the meeting topic too much, because if we need to take the time to clarify some things, we usually are you know even as folks come in late into the session, we might give a whole debriefing of what's been going on. And yeah, it's been a good feeling so far. But yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of overlap potentially, right? In some of the community building efforts of both advocates, right? But also, as mentioned to folks earlier, folks in the NFT space, or folks on chapters building efforts. It's possible that there's tooling coming out of advocates that is useful to you, that speaks to distributed power in a serious way. It can speak to horizontality upskilling. Right, is one of the topics we've been getting a little bit deeper into as of late. It comes out of a project near and dear to our research, as well as Harvard blockchain research that I mentioned earlier, that you will hear often in these sessions referenced. But this particular project is now out of Michigan, originally out of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And it was called Generative Justice. It is called Generative Justice. And there was a big emphasis throughout the entirety of case studies from around the world, papers from interdiscipline students and peers, a big emphasis on lay people, a big emphasis on the power of hidden capital and upskilling, right, in local, regional, communities that usually are locked out of access. And it frames it in context of digital fabrication, kind of like 3D printers and beyond, a whole lot of tooling folks aren't aware of in that world, and open source software, so open source hardware and software. And shows a whole lot of the transformative potential therein. And I think this has been a big part of the advocacy ethos, right? And in trying to bring this interdiscipline systems design rather than hyper specialized product design, right? There's a hyper focus on the consumer, and generators of value that are also participants in that system kind of get left out, right? And so to not lose focus of the consumer, but also zoom out a little bit, is the idea of systems design. And then there's a whole other layer with commons-based design, right? Trying to take what you see at the macro of Creative Commons licensing and open source, and bring it into the micro of how we're actually organizing with each other, rather than what we tend to see, which is same old top-down conventional business models and business model structures. Even in the context of DAOs, right? There's this idea of trustless autonomy rather than really figuring out how to achieve autonomy while organized together, right? And the idea of trustlessness with the same old structures of top-down implementation, right, can get choppy in terms of the long-term dynamics of all blockchain-based systems, right? And so this is one of the warnings from Primavera de Filippi out of Harvard, but also some of the ethos out of the Generative Justice Project that has started to fuel some of our conversations as of late. This idea of the transformative impact of horizontal upskilling, right? That feeling that tangible access to upskilling yourself at your own pace, right? Scaling that out to collectives. How this plays into commons as well, right? As commons can come in all types of shapes and forms of exchanges that are usually fairly hard to see. Um, you know, they tend to happen like this on purpose, right? For extraction and top-down structures, right? And the exchanges, right, if made visible, would likely bring light to a whole lot of uh, regenerative abundance, right, that happens in spite of top-down structures, and would definitely be possible if the structures were actually being defined by the generators of value themselves, right? And so uh, the idea of a solar company coming into a suburban area and uh, hiring folks but minimally training them, leaving with a whole lot of profit and not leaving behind too many skills, juxtaposed next to a community that builds an entire microgrid for themselves, right? And the thick community that it builds, the agency that it installs, the the distributed power that's possible, right? And yeah, the distinctions there, right, are huge, right? And to be able to have this as a part of incentive design, right, seems interesting, right? As in terms of bringing these long-term sustainability through complex dynamics, these type of incentives to the foreground, and bringing the hyper competition and purely monetary or extrinsic motivations or incentives into the background, right, is an interesting ethos that we've come up out in advocates as well. So this tends to be the general feel of these sessions, and the tooling might come up in the discussions at certain weeks where we're trying to focus on getting certain things done. But yeah, we'll always come back to this, or we'll be referring to these type of things in trying to do those things as well. So again, it's beautiful to see new folks here. Hopefully, this was a decent enough debriefing of what you guys will see a lot more of the weeds of, I'm sure. But yeah, leave the floor open if there's any quick comments or responses. Uh, I know I may have said some things to Shoto who I haven't said to Grandma Escher, but yeah, these sessions are usually us trying to seriously think about the structures of advocates itself, right, as opposed to and helping folks along, right, who come through with from their own backgrounds and projects, and ensuring that they have a place and built right into the advocate's design. But yeah, I'll leave the floor open.
One quick question. How often do these calls take place? Is it like a regular scheduled thing, or should I just keep an eye on the events channel?
Yeah, it's always good to keep an eye on the events channel. We were actually just recently discussing possibly changing up the times of these sessions to try to accommodate other time zones than the folks who have been able to consistently make it. We've had a good handfuls of people who are here weekly. We're here every week, and it's twice a week at the beginning of the week, Monday and Tuesday. And sometimes we have sessions as well at the end of the week that are directly in contact with the Native Council, which have been always give a whole lot of momentum to the weeks following. So sometimes some of those events will pop up as well. You also see a governance working group event popping up that you can find myself and a lot of other folks in these sessions at as well. So yeah, thank you, Colin, for asking. Yeah, and it's 1:30 on Tuesdays, and if I'm not mistaken, is it 1 on Mondays or 12? I get them conflated sometimes. I think it's one. Yeah.